Hi, I'm Mel,
Hi, I'm Danny.
and we're the Sheehan sisters.
If you haven't seen our faces before, we do commentary and podcast style videos on topics on topics we like to talk about when we can talk.
As always, grab your coffee, your beverage of choice, your snacks, your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner. Get cozy, get comfy, because we have a lot to talk about.
As we always do.
That's kind of the point of
The channel. I don't have any sugar in my coffee today. It's not done intentionally. I just ran out of.
creamer.
I usually get the caramel jar from Trader Joe's.
Ooh, yeah.
And then I'll put some in my cup, melt that, and then add the rest.
You don't have any sugar in your house?
I do have sugar. I don't know. I could have put sugar in it. This is my second coffee, and I had used sugar and a little bit of like vanilla bean flavoring.
Okay.
So my first coffee was delicious. Not that this isn't delicious. It's been a while, but it's probably for the best. I don't need all that sugar anyway.
Yeah, I'm currently drinking a brown sugar oatmeal cookie creamer, something along those lines.
Where'd you get that?
The creamer?
Yeah.
At the supermarket. It's Planet Oat.
Really? I haven't seen that one.
You gotta go. It might be seasonal. It might be a Christmas thing and still like left over from that. So you gotta go look for it.
I also want to point out, if you see a hole in my sweater, I am aware of it, okay? I actually don't think it's as noticeable. You know, it's like one of those things where if you point it out, people can now notice it, but...
Right. Now everyone's commenting. Everyone leave a comment down below.
Saying what?
I was gonna say we see the hole, and I didn't like that, so I just stopped. I was just like, just leave a comment or whatever you please. You know, we're here to promote free thinking.
Preferably, you know, kind comments.
Yes.
You can disagree with us, but do it in a kind manner. Let's bring that back, and let's bring that, not even back, because I don't know if that ever existed. Let's bring that into 2026.
Let's introduce some kindness. Okay. Well, I want to start the video off a little silly, a little fun before we get into some serious topics. If you guys didn't watch last week's video, what are you doing? Go watch it. But you missed out on a pretty iconic moment of Danny. What's the word?
What did I do? What did I do?
You showed the world your little jingle.
Oh my God. I debuted a jingle that I think you all should incorporate into your morning routine.
Yes, and I found a video that I feel like I love to show videos that encapsulate our relationship. So I feel like this plays out exactly what happened at that time. So I'm gonna just show it, okay?
Play the clip. Why I feel like it's gonna be shady though? Why do I feel like there's some shade approaching?
No, this is an honor, okay? This is a representation of me supporting Danny while she is her authentic self. Are you ready?
This is how you remind me of how I really am. Not like you, so sorry. I'm a different story. Never shot, I'm breaking. Keep it up and make it. better in the world in my head. What a hell that he held that.
What an iconic duo.
Oh my God, I don't even want to see the movie that they're promoting, but I've been watching their whole press tour because them together has just been everything I didn't know I was missing. But I feel like that's our energies.
I love that. Yeah, that's great.
But I just felt like that's exactly what happened. You gotta go watch the last. But that's like recreation. Like that's life imitating art. You know, art and life imitating one another. How do you feel about that?
There will be plenty more where that came from.
Hopefully we can play that. Jack's saying it's so good we might get copyrighted, but I feel like that meme has been surfacing around, so I could just show that picture and everyone will know.
I haven't seen that clip, so thank you for sharing.
No, and I encourage you to go and watch their interviews together. Do you know what sign Paul Rudd is? Or Jack Black, both of them?
I don't, but I can try to make a guess.
Okay, oh yes, I want to see what your guess is.
Jack Black is a stumper. He might be... Is he a Cancer?
No.
Am I close?
In what regard?
Like around that month.
No.
Okay, Aquarius.
Jack Black is a Virgo and Paul Rudd is an Aries.
Okay.
I gotta see Jack Black's whole chart, but I think Virgos are really funny. And Aries are just always gonna vibe with you.
I need to see Jack Black's rising.
Right? Let's see if anyone has his birth chart.
If you all didn't know, we used to do a lot of astrology videos, so we will always incorporate that somehow, some way.
Okay, so he's a Cancer rising, so you got that. You got that. That was our that concludes the funny segment of the day. Thank you for watching.
Like I said in our last episode, we have a combination of silly and serious, so stay tuned.
We're still gonna make jokes to cope with everything that's happening in the world. Is there anything else you like to say before we get into our first segment of the day?
I was spiraling a little bit about some of the things we talked about on our last episode, but...
As far as what?
Well, it's just that we're talking about trends and I'm saying like bangs are in, and I still stand by that, but it's also like the world is crumbling, so who really cares if you have bangs or not?
No, if you're gonna be out there fighting, you might as well look good while you do it.
Right.
And you were right, the bangs are back. Sadie Sink has bangs. Who else did I see just had bangs?
Jennifer Lawrence.
The bangs are back. So, you know, you gotta start somewhere. Bring the bangs back, and then we bring back...
What?
Then we make the real bang, and I don't know.
Then we bring back the revolution. Okay, next. What are we talking about today?
First topic of the day is our pop culture segment. We want to start having segments. They're not always going to be the same each week, but
we want some structure.
They're going to be same ones, but not always repeated each week. So we're going to be a little, you know what I realized? We're going to be a little late, but it's always going to be relevant.
Always. I think it's our editing really that we would have these videos out sooner, but you know, we still have our life outside of making YouTube videos, and that includes work and sleep and cleaning and other duties that we have to take care of. So we should start putting the dates in our videos so that people don't think that we filmed this after, because we're on top of shit. We really are.
We are, yeah, but no, the things that we're going to talk about today though are a little happened last year or a few years ago, but we're going to talk about it today, but it's still relevant in the world. But we are on top of shit. You'll see the overall, like, you guys will just start to see it. And yeah, we're not professional editors, so it takes us a lot longer to edit. Some people can do a turnaround in 1-2 days because they know what they're doing.
It took us about 3 hours yesterday to figure out.
Fucking color correction.
It's fine.
It's fine.
We're teaching ourselves, so I'm proud of us regardless.
I'm always proud of us. I'm also proud of us. A little tease before we get into, I'm sorry, I know, we delay things. Just patience, guys. We're here to teach you all patience. I'm so proud of us because we finished our first book already of 2026. So stay tuned for later in the video where we discuss the book.
Yes, and I do want to point out that if you are seeing this in the future, you can still go read this book. You know what I'm saying? You don't need to be like, oh, I missed reading it with the Sheehan sisters, but that doesn't matter. Still pick up the book, and we're still going to encourage you to read.
Yes.
All right, so what is our pop culture question of the day?
I love that you phrased it that way because I was going to actually pose a question to the audience. We touched on this topic in our last video with Nicki Minaj, and the title of our last video about, do we separate the art from the artist, right? And that's where my question comes in, is why are some of y'all still supporting these YouTubers, okay? I need to know.
Specifically, we're talking about James Charles and Colleen Ballinger.
The reason we're grouping the two of them together, in my opinion, I feel like they both have shown predatory behavior and harmful behavior towards children. And they've even admitted to what they've done in past videos, and people still are choosing to support them. Or I think they rely on some of their fans just not believing that any of it's true, or they find a new fan base who won't know anything about the past.
Right. They are still getting platformed. They are still being an influence over people, specifically younger people.
Right. And they're still monetizing off of that, making money. And I just don't understand. I don't understand, again, why people are still supporting them, why people can't believe victims when they speak out, why don't we feel the need to protect children. And that's kind of what Danny and I want to talk about today. We don't have kids, but we do have nieces and nephews. So I always think of them in situations like this. Like, I don't want to find out that they're in private group chats with some 30-year-old. I don't want to find out that there's someone Snapchatting them naked. Like, I don't want to find out this information. Like, I wouldn't be able to, I can't even fathom these adults that are doing that. Obviously, stuff like this has been happening for years, but then to see it come out so publicly. And I mean, I guess I'm not too surprised, because obviously if we look at Hollywood or Hollyweird, we know that shit is very prevalent.
If we look at our own administration here in our country, we know people actually don't care. They really don't care about the predators. That's astonishing, even though a lot of driving points are, we need to protect the children. Okay, so what are you doing to protect them?
Right. So to go into, like, specifically Colleen, who's on Raven Simone's podcast towards the end of last year, And she admitted to being in these group chats with the kids, right? Although she won't admit to everything she's done, that admission right there is enough to be like, okay, what's going on there? And I think she's in denial about her own actions. But it's like, can we just, like, I wish they would have pressed her more in it. I feel like they babied her in that interview. But also, like, just an adult to an adult, be like, what made you want to talk to children? Why did you want to be a part of that? Like, again, we have nieces and nephews, and I talk to them when I see them, but I'm not going to text them my life problems and talk to them about weird shit. Like, I just know not to do that. Like, that's just not, and I have no desire to do that. And it's like, and she kept being like, well, I didn't know.
The whole situation is weird to me. I never really kept up with Colleen to begin with.
Right.
I never really watched her channel. I know she blew up because of her Miranda Sings character.
I never liked that, never was a fan, didn't get it. No shade, just didn't get that shit.
And apparently she's going on tour this year, right?
She's going on tour, and she also brought back or teased that she's bringing back the Miranda Sings character. And that's how it goes to show that, again, these people just don't learn, because it's like, maybe reinvent yourself, maybe do something new, maybe we get rid of the toxicity. Like, that character, and even in her interview, she blames a lot on the character of like, well, the character is supposed to be innocent, or the character doesn't know that this is inappropriate, or like the character, I don't know, like she's separating her own fucking artist over here herself, trying to compartmentalize herself from her character, but then now she's bringing back that character, so it's like, you learned nothing.
And that's what I think it is. It's obvious that she hasn't learned from her mistakes. There's so much that goes into it, because it's like, A, why were these your actions? And B, why are you still not realizing how wrong your actions were? And I agree, like, why would you bring back a character that invited a lot of those actions into your life?
Right, and mainly became someone who is pushed onto children.
Right.
And that's what that audience mainly is. So it's like, why? Yeah, like, it's just, you're repeating the same behavior. You're not learning anything. And I'd be curious to see who is at her live show. Like, I would just be curious to see, like, who her fans are. Like, someone needs to be standing outside of that venue questioning them. Like, and what did you think of this, that? You know, like, I want to see what people think. Are they just like, well, I don't believe it? Or are they also weirdos? Like, what's happening there?
I'm sure they are. The thing is, she loves the spotlight so much that this woman can't just put her head down, move on with her life, go down other paths, change for the better. No, she's still crawling back to the same fucking characters and the same fucking toxicity and the same business and industry. You didn't change. You're not learning your lessons. You still want to be immersed in the same industry that you got apparently torn down from and so fucking, like, depressed over, because she likes to make herself the victim.
Right.
But then you're going right back to where it all started. That doesn't make any sense. Just go away. These people, they never want to go away. They want the power. They want the spotlight. They want people to fawn over them. They want people to feel bad for them. They want people to have eyes on them.
Exactly.
And she could, if she really wanted to change her life, she could have, but we see that she's not, and she's choosing not to. It's weird. She's a weird ass adult. I think she needs to crawl back into her hole and just disappear from the internet.
Right. I agree. And if you're not familiar with who she is, that's fantastic. We will link some videos down below if you don't know the whole scandal, all the allegations against her. I specifically want to link below Adam McIntyre, who is one of her victims. And like, again, people take the word victim and they don't fully understand it. And I think she also fully doesn't understand it, where if you're in a position of power and you're also the adult in a situation and you're using that to manipulate a child, that child is now a victim. It doesn't always have to be something that's physical, right? Mental abuse and mental manipulation is just as harming to children. Their brains are still developing. And Adam, who I believe now is 23, so he's still very young and he's still probably rediscovering so much about his life. Like, I know the older I get, the more I look back on certain situations and be like, okay, that wasn't okay and that wasn't right. And she started speaking to him and befriended him when he was 13, 14. So it's like, I don't know what mental gymnastics she's doing in her own mind. I don't know if she really even is in therapy or what she's saying to her therapist, because I just don't understand the justification she's making to be like, that was fine, that was okay, that I was friends with this person as a child, and then also was hell-bent on destroying their life, and still to this day, I can't admit the wrongs that I did to this person.
And someone else who falls in that same category is James Charles, who we have heard numerous stories about. There have been plenty of people who have come out and told their story on him being a predator, him reaching out to minors, him finding out they're underage and still continue to pursue them. This person still has millions of subscribers on YouTube.
Yeah, millions of subscribers on YouTube, millions of followers on TikTok and Instagram. And these allegations happened years ago, and he even came out with an apology video at the time. I think it was 2020. And even claims that he was desperate. He's looking for loves, and then he wasn't checking people's IDs and ages. And again, that's why we're putting these two people in the same category, because it's like, what is going through your mind and your brain of like to speak to someone younger than you? Like, if you even have to think about IDing someone, maybe just don't even talk to them.
There are plenty of places you can go, plenty of bars, plenty of cafes, plenty of atmospheres where you know damn well that that person is a grown-ass adult.
Exactly. Like, go to a bar and you know they're IDing the bouncer already did the job for you. They're already IDing people. Again, if you don't know what we're talking about, we will link more videos down below. We're more here to just bash these people because they're bad people, but we're here to just give our opinions on those situations. And so in 2020, Ethan Rhett is one of the many people who came out to speak out against James Charles, and he is 14 at the time, and now he's 19, and he came out again. Same story, because again, the older you get, the more things are put into perspective for you, and the more you realize things aren't okay. Even though even when he was young, he was realizing it was not okay, but he's like, I'm gonna keep speaking out and telling my story because this is what happens to me. And same with Adam McIntyre. It's like, I'm gonna keep telling my story as many times as I'm gonna tell it, because I want people to know that this person is a danger. This person is not right in their mind. We need to get this person deplatformed.
And the reason we're calling them out is because we are going to touch upon some media in a couple minutes that we feel like some of the messages within that series or that movie focuses on the vulnerability of children. And we also, not to a slight spoiler for a couple months from now, we do have a book, Catcher in the Rye, that we will be including in our book club, and that also, the main character's mission is to save the children. So we just wanted to dedicate an episode talking about the importance of protecting children's innocence, and just talking about, because there's so much more that goes into it, and we're going to expand upon it in just a couple minutes, but just, teaching your children to read, to be critically aware, to have situational awareness, to really, build their knowledge, to be vigilant. And it's unfortunate, Mel and I were saying this off camera, that it's unfortunate, you have to teach your child to be aware of this rather than us just, prosecuting the predators. Unfortunately, it's the same thing with women, where, women, instead of the men, the predators that are going after the women, it's always the woman that has to like be vigilant and wear a certain thing and can't go out at night and can't go out past a certain hour, so we are going to expand on these thoughts. Is there anything more you want to say about those YouTubers, or do you want to start talking about some of the media you wanted to point out today?
Well, I'll probably still bring them up, like, as we do. I'll probably still connect things back and forth, even though they're segments. I still will probably weave things together and point out the relevance between the two. But I agree with what you're saying. Like, we now have to, not now, like, we have to teach children discernment, because unfortunately there's adults out there who clearly lack it, and I don't even know the word for it. They're just weirdos. Like, they're weirdos, they're predators, they're creepy. They need to go to therapy. They need to figure shit out. But
if we could banish them off the face of the earth, we would.
If I can Thanos snap all the fucking... I know we talked about not wanting to censor our talk, but I do like people calling them PDF files. I feel like that one fits.
But it does ruin like actual PDF files from like using like Adobe. I'm saying, like documents. I'm saying, like, when you're in school, imagine now where you're like, oh, like attach the PDF file, and then now it's like, oh, I'm attaching the...
But how many? Yeah, well,
like, that will always be attached now. You know what I'm saying?
Well, we gotta we need the constant reminder that they're out there. So
it's so true.
And I think there's a lot of people who still blame children, where they're like, well, the children shouldn't be on the internet. And it's like, no, these fucking weirdos shouldn't be on the internet, actually. Like you said, where we like don't teach the men how to treat when we teach the women how to save themselves. And then we do the same with children. And that really pisses me off. And it's like, the child is never at fault because they are a child. Like, they don't know. That's why science and doctors and people have done all these studies to show you about the brain and development and growth and nurture versus nature and all of these things, and it's still not clicking in people's heads. So 2 pieces of media we wanted to mention were Stranger Things, the Netflix series, and Weapons, the movie, which I think Weapons, did it come out last year or 2024?
Let me verify. Last year, yeah.
Okay, so Weapons came out last year. Also, spoiler alert for all of these.
Exactly.
But for me, I felt like the main message in both movies was, once again, save the children. Both of the main villains in each story are specifically targeting children. you know, and we may even say maybe Gladys Miranda sings, Vecna James Charles. You see the correlations of life, you know, just something to think about, something to ponder.
And I'm sure there's plenty other media that people can point out where the focus is like trying to manipulate or what's the word I'm thinking of? I'm sure there's plenty of media that focuses on like a villain, or the main plot line is the manipulation of children because of their innocence, and you know, just to point out like Vecna's reasoning, their weakness, right? And Mel and I were talking about this off screen. We're still not completely sure why Gladys in Weapons wanted to literally weaponize the children, but it clearly was significant and important to her.
Well, I think one of the messages they were trying to show in that movie is that she's kind of trying to get her health or her youth back in some way with the tree, like the tree of life. Right? And then again, like when you go into Stranger Things, Rebecca is like, well, I take the children because they're weaker. And I feel like that's kind of maybe, well, even though she was able to put the parents in a trance, but clearly they weren't. I think there's a line in that movie too where she says like the parents aren't working for her, so that's why she goes for the children.
Right, and then we see the main boy, I forget his name right now. Do you remember? The what? Her like not her grandson, her nephew, right?
Yeah, that's supposed to be like his great aunt or whatever.
He ends up having to be the caretaker for his parents. So that was something Mel and I also pointed out, because some people are alluding to an underlying message of Weapons being about addiction.
His name is Alex.
Alex.
Right. I kind of saw it as like for Alex's character, like him having to come home and his parents are kind of in this catatonic state and he has to feed them and take care of them, but also feed himself. But then Gladys is also telling him like, don't tell anyone, like when you go to school, don't tell anyone. And that's kind of what happens in abusive households and also in predatory situations where there's this adult figure that's telling the child, well, don't tell anybody. So they obey them and think, okay, I have to listen to what they say. And then also she threatens him as well to be like, well, I'll kill them if you do tell anybody.
Of course, weaponizing the child's fear, and you know, I don't know why I'm having a tough time today. There's the obvious power dynamic where the adult in the situation knows that the child doesn't have the resources and the maturity and the knowledge to, you know, really fight them. So they're able to take advantage, and they're able to I don't know, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm losing it. I can talk more about Stranger Things, but Weapons, for some reason, that movie, it disturbed me, but I also feel like some of the messages got lost throughout the storyline. You know, somebody did point out, I saw a comment on a YouTube video where they were comparing Gladys to like a old folklore witch, right? And we see that in not Jack and Jill.
Hansel and Gretel.
What?
Hansel and Gretel.
Hansel and Gretel, yes. And they end up stumbling upon the witch's house and they become victims. I can't remember if they end up escaping in that folklore.
Right? I feel like they did escape somehow. Like they ate their way out of the house, or I don't know what happened to the witch, but
Well, Mel also pointed out how in Hocus Pocus, right, the three witches, the Sanderson sisters, are also utilizing the children specifically to maintain their youth and sucking up their energy.
Right. Like Danny mentioned, there's probably countless media. So comment below a movie that you feel shows, someone in a position of power utilizing children, manipulating children. Because I'm also thinking of like Captain Hook, Peter Pan. That's a classic one. That's a whole. We want to rewatch the movie Hook and do a whole analysis on that as well.
And just to tie it back to Stranger Things, right, we have Vecna, who has been utilizing Will, right, since season 1, and he was the catalyst, and he was like the first source to really be manipulated and be taken advantage of and be a vessel for this evil force. I think ultimately we see how in Weapons and in Stranger Things, right, the two main characters, Will and Alex, ultimately like reclaim their power and do take part in overthrowing the evil forces.
I was also thinking while watching the series of Stranger Things that Vecna and the Mind Flayer also represented depression in a way. And I feel like, again, like we were speaking with Gladys, where like it's kind of an overall arc of like depression and trauma, how it affects a child's life. Because if you look at the characters like Billy, who had an abusive dad, his parents are divorced, he's taking that anger out on Max. He dies. Max is now punishing herself for not saving Billy. And a line that I noticed throughout the series of like from the kids of being like, I didn't do anything, I just stood there, why didn't I do anything? So I think that goes to your point of like Alex and Will finally finding their power again. Because again, children, they are helpless, and if they don't have anyone teaching them, they have to either learn for themselves, and sometimes they're facing scary fucking situations that they've never encountered before, and who's helping them navigate if they don't really have their parents? Because another thing you see in these movies is like the absence of the parents.
We didn't want to deep dive too far into talking about Stranger Things because there is so much to be said about that series as a whole. And I know there is so much discourse online right now, a lot of criticism, a lot of analysis, a lot of opinions definitely about the series. Maybe in the future we can do a full dedication to that series because there are so many layers to it and so much to be discussed. But we did want to point out, just to pivot away from our overall theme of saving the children, we did want to pivot to the audience's attachment to the series and discussing a little bit more of the attachment problem we do as a society have with certain shows.
Right. And I think the parasocial relationships that people have, we're not pivoting too far away because I think it still connects to children as well because they're also on the internet, as we had just mentioned. But then to also see the behavior from adults as well, where it's like, okay, it's going to be okay. It's just a show. It doesn't impact your life that much. Like, I understand that some of them, I cried, I did cry. I understand the emotional attachment. But we need to just like take it down a notch. We need to calm down a little bit.
As we saw, the whole internet, the whole internet convinced themselves that there was going to be an additional episode of Stranger Things after the finale. They convinced themselves that there was going to be another episode after the finale. So much so that people had a name, it was Conformity Gate. They were convinced that all of season 5 was just a dream, that we were all just in Vecna's subconscious. All the main cast didn't really fight the evil, and they were just asleep in Vecna's. They were just asleep in Vecna's lair this whole time. And what did we learn? We learned that wasn't the reality. There was no additional episode. The series ended. No matter how you feel about it, that's the ending we got. And, I'm somebody that some people get annoyed when people are nitpicking a show and nitpicking the last season. But I also think that you can have some critical analysis of a show. I think that is part of constructive criticism. That's part of, like the big term that's been going around, critical thinking. That's part of being able to dissect a piece of media and have questions, try to make connections. And sure, there is a level of unhealthiness, right? But I think that there is an importance and a significance to be able to critically examine a series, a book, a movie.
Right, of course, yeah, and oh my God, hold on. Of course, and we've obviously done that before with Yellow Jackets and other movies, and we're gonna do it with our books. I just think, like, some people I get it, you could be upset that it didn't end the way you wanted it to, and you can be confused as to, like, well, I was following it along and thought I was making sense, and now how did we get here? Like, of course, yeah, have your critical thinking. Oh my God.
No.
We always want to encourage critical thinking, but I think also to do that, sometimes you have to kind of take your biases and your emotions out of it for a second and be like, okay, it's perfectly fine. It didn't end. You know what I'm saying? Like, like basically, like your life is gonna be okay if the book or the show didn't end in the way that you wanted it to. And you can have that criticism on the art, but there's nothing we can do to change it.
But I do understand the emotional attachment to a show. Like we said in our last episode, our last episode, we were saying, people's attachment to artists and their music and, what they create. And people attach, they can have an attachment to certain pieces of media or certain art because it did do something for them emotionally, or they had a bad day or they're going through something painful, and then they were able to put on the show or put on the song, and that was, that pulled them out of that, sadness or that pain. So I'm the type of person, after I watch a series, I do start deep diving about it. So I watched, I don't know, 20 videos.
Right.
Deep diving about Stranger Things, and I did agree with a lot of the takes for season 5. Did Mel and I also kind of hold out hope that there would be an additional episode? Sure, but that just goes to show how much this series had an impact on a lot of us, especially because it was over the course of 10 years. So I don't know. I see both sides, and I usually try to with most situations. But yeah, do I think that there's a level of dissociation we need to have when it comes to a piece of media? Right. Yeah. I mean, the Duffer Brothers, they're millionaires. They're moving on. They have their other projects. This criticism will probably follow them for the rest of their lives.
Right. But then again, that's where it goes into, like, again, our overall like one of our overall themes of like separating art and artists, where it's like I understand, obviously I also understand the emotional attachment, and I have had that with many things. And then again, like with the Nicki Minaj situation or with countless other situations where it comes out and these people aren't the people you think they are, with James Charles, Miranda Sings, countless people, where they comes out and you're like, okay. And we're not saying that about the Duffer Brothers, obviously. They, whatever, they're just not good writers, you know. That's the least of the concerns of the world. But where it's like, you said, have some sort of dissociation or some kind of separation between the two. And like as a whole in society, like moving away from the idolization of celebrities and of people in general, because I think what we need also is more community, is it comes down to too. And we're going to get into our book soon, because there's, I think, a really good piece in here to compare all of this to as well. I don't know if, I don't want to get into that yet, of just like seeing the people on the screen as you, again, having that emotional attachment. They are your security blanket and they are what you turn to. And it's sad because a lot of us don't have any people to turn to. We don't have any real people to turn to, and we're turning to shows and music. And I think it's great, and it's one of the main purposes of art, and that's why Danny and I make art, because we want people who can feel that way about what we create. But then it's like such a double-edged sword of like, when does it go too far?
Right, and just to tie it back into us talking about saving the children, I think you make a good point, because I think now more than ever, like when children are isolated or lonely, they're turning to the internet, and that could be a very dangerous place. And if the adults in their life are not teaching them what to look out for or what to think critically about, that's where things can go terribly wrong. And I also wanted to point it out, this is a little controversial, but a lot of people had backlash for Will's coming out scene. And I totally understand. Some people think it was unnecessary altogether, but I'm also looking at it from the perspective of younger viewers who may be in that similar situation, and they were able to watch that scene and maybe reflect on parts of themselves and their identity and give them the courage to understand themselves better. You know, a lot of people, a lot of adults are getting upset, and it's like, yeah, well, we're not the only ones watching, right? So let's keep that in mind before we start bashing Will Byers for coming out. Obviously, I agree that it shouldn't have been with the whole cast. I don't think the whole cast needed to be there.
And I'm glad you said that too, because I think that also goes to show too about the lack of critical thinking, where some things aren't plot holes, you're just not paying attention. Like obviously the show, of course, we can go into the countless plot holes. We know the ending didn't make any sense. But that scene in particular was like one of the few things that made sense. That was his fear. And it's still a fear for a lot of people. There's some people on the internet be like, oh, big deal, like we knew, or like joking around. And it's like, that is scary for a lot of people still to this day, especially in the 80s. But even now in 2026, there's still people who are scared to come out to the people they love. So like fear is one of the main bases and themes of that show, and he needs to face one of his biggest fears. So like what's not clicking in that?
Right, and just to go off of what you said, where people were like, oh yeah, well, we all knew. Okay, well, this was an empowering moment for that specific character. It doesn't matter if he feels like, oh, everyone around me already knows. Like, that's him reclaiming his power to be able to say it out loud and to be able to say it to his loved ones, because he's still coming to terms with it himself.
Yes. And I think that's another thing about like analyzing art, is being able to take the messages that are being given. Because again, like that's where my problem comes in with too much nitpicking. Like, yeah, have the critical analysis and constructive criticism, but then some things, some things you're pointing out don't make any, you have to also understand when you're not making any sense. Because then some people are like, well, what about this character and that character? And it's like, they were side characters for a reason. You know what I'm saying? Watch Degrassi. That show will kick out a character with no explanation. You're like, where'd they go? We don't know. They're gone.
I do want to agree with some takes where people were saying that the Duffers shouldn't have written that scene. I think they should have worked with why am I blanking on his name? Noah Schnapp, or even someone else that is openly part of the queer community and help them write it. I think it's interesting that they, as straight men, want it. I mean, from what I know, they're straight, right? I did see Noah in an interview say that he thought they were going to ask him to help them write that scene. So I kind of agree with that.
Right, and I have seen clips of their team and the cast trying to help them with things, and it's like, if you want to be, because they're also directing, they're not just writing the show, they're directing it, and it's like, you have to be able to work with one another to form the show.
Right, I think their ego got in the way with a lot of the writing this season, but again, we can have a whole different episode dedicated to Stranger Things if you all want. I know I feel like either the discourse around Stranger Things is going to continue for a while, or it's going to start to die down. And there's still plenty of people that haven't even watched the show or haven't even watched season 5. So I'm sure there'll still be a lot of conversations around this show. I think there's still a lot more to say. So we'll see what happens in the next coming months.
I think it's funny, it's like, will people still be talking about this? But we need to keep media alive. Is that the word I'm looking for? Like, we need to, like, we're about to talk about a book that was published in the 1950s. Like, we need to continue conversations about art and literature and media and movies, because there are important messages in them. So I think people will still be talking about that show for years to come. I definitely think it's made its mark in TV show history, for better or for worse.
I agree. And I know we always say we're hypocrites. I know we're hypocrites because we were very angry at Yellow Jackets.
That's what I want to say, and I saw myself. We're all mirrors of one another, and as I was scrolling through the Stranger Things, doom scrolling through the rabbit hole of Conformity Gate, I saw myself, and I was like, I need to stop nitpicking. And that's what I'm saying. I think we need to learn the difference between nitpicking and constructive criticism. If someone walked up to you and started pointing out every fucking little thing, that they didn't like about you, there's a difference between, them nitpicking at you and giving you constructive criticism.
There was a level of unhealthiness that was happening around Conformity Gate. A lot of funny memes, though. A lot of funny shorts and reels.
Comedy's always gonna come and shine through in situations.
The thing that I love about the internet is that we will always have better ideas. We will always think we'll have better ideas, and maybe we do. But unfortunately, that's just not the case. It's not our story to tell.
Right. But I think it also shows that we do have the power to all come together. We just need to displace the anger into other areas of life and maybe come together and form those ideas into some, you know what I'm saying? Like, we can construct and organize, and we can come together, and we can think, and we can get a movement going. So, just something to think about.
Let's move on to what you've all been waiting for.
Yes, I'm so excited. Finally, we're doing our book club. This is the first installment of the Sheehan Sisters book club. DMS Productions. You guys, there's no more PBS, but there is DMS. And we're here. This is the new Reading Rainbow. for adults.
It is. I did just finish it today. You know, I did say no procrastination in 2026. I did procrastinate a tiny bit reading the book. However, this is my redemption. I did meet my deadline.
And that's all that matters.
I did meet my deadline, and I'm going to try to avoid that moving forward for our next book.
Yes, which we'll announce that before February.
Yes. So we read Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury. Again, if you didn't read it with us, that's okay. I still encourage you to go pick up this book, go read it. Yeah. I'm sure you can find, wink, wink, PD. See, this is why I want to use PDF file, but now that got ruined.
I see now, I see. You don't want to find the PDF file, yeah.
You may be able to find it online somewhere. I finished it this morning and I got so emotional. I texted Mel. I said I felt like crying after I finished this. And that's because this book, you know, I started thinking about all the messages that this book provided in terms of our real world. And it just really made me think about, you know, my convictions and what what would I stand up for, and what, you know, put myself in the main character's shoes. And we can dive deep into it. Do you want to give an overview of the book, Mel, or do you want to just start saying your opinions on it?
I guess I'll give a small overview that the main plot of it centers around Guy Montag. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name correctly.
I say Montag.
Montag, okay. So Guy Montag is a firefighter, and in this dystopian world, firefighters are sent to people's houses if they're under suspicion of owning books, because owning books is illegal. So the firefighters go and burn the house down and the books and sometimes the people. And
so if you are caught with books, you do get arrested. Books are outlawed. In this dystopian world, they encourage you to, in their terms, quote unquote, have fun. So in this world, they don't want their society to be educated. No, they want them to get, think about, like, I was gonna say plasma screens, but like what's bigger than a basically in this world,
huge projector almost, right?
It's like projectors. The walls in everyone's houses are the TVs. Like, imagine your whole living room wall as just a screen. And some people have all four walls as screens. So they constantly have a show on.
And I feel like he predicted a lot of the future. Again, this is published in 1950s, and even though it's not exactly to that extent of like one wall of a screen, we do have screens everywhere. We are constantly looking at a screen. You're looking at a screen right now. You know, like sometimes, we have talked about this before, I've had like 3 screens: my phone, my laptop, my TV. Like, so he's not too far off in like having just your whole living room be screens, because that's what we're doing now.
And just to, you know, bring this back to Stranger Things quickly, it was said that Netflix intentionally wanted the writing, because you mentioned this in one of our other episodes, that they're dumbing down the writing in shows because of what's called a second screen viewing. They're basically assuming their audience has their phone or their laptop in front of them while the show is in the background. So they're assuming you're not really paying attention. So they're having the writing dumbed down so that if you come back into the show, you can have a full recap of what's happening in the scene without having to fully pay attention, which is super scary. It's super unfortunate, but this is another reason why Mel and I wanted to start the book club, because we really don't want to get sucked into
the screens.
into the screens and into you know, idiocracy.
That's another good that's a good movie.
I haven't seen that movie. I don't think I have.
Watch it and we can talk about that.
Okay. You know, we still want to use our brains. Like, that's what we want to do here. And in the main, you know, the main message in this book is that in this society, they're encouraging people not to use their brains, right? They don't want them to have books. They want them to watch these screens with this nonsensical show that doesn't really have a storyline or doesn't really have dialogue, doesn't really have meaning. You know, in one scene, in one chapter, they had the main character and his wife, and she had her friends over, right? And then she put the show on, and he's describing the show, and the show was ultimately just them like killing a bunch of animals. Do you remember this?
Yeah, and it's like the clowns and I was like, he also kind of predicted like AI videos, because I feel like that's what's on the internet now, just like stupidity. Like he kind of already, you know, predicted brain rot.
He definitely did.
I was gonna say, like, although I admit it to also like being a second screen viewer, it's usually because I'm losing interest. I'm not feeling engaged in a show, and that's when I'll pull my phone out. So it's like these shows shouldn't be like, okay, well, let's go lean into that. They should be like, no, I'm gonna make something that wants you to be engaged. Like Yellow Jackets, like there was many that I did not pick my phone up. Like I was in the show. As much criticism as I had of the show, I was in it. Also Severance, great show. Like I feel like there are some movies and TV shows where you're like, I'm engaged, I'm in this. And even this book, I haven't felt that way in a while. And I did read this in high school, but rereading it, I was literally sitting there just fully immersed in the book, and it felt great, and I miss that feeling, because that's how I felt as a kid. Like I loved reading and books as a kid.
Absolutely. So many scenes like really brought me into the story, and I can imagine myself being the main character. You know, another element I feel Ray Bradbury predicted was people's lack of empathy for one another. You know, they're pushing people to focus more on TV shows or listening to a radio station, and like we just mentioned, a lot of it doesn't have meaning, doesn't have significance. It's just something to numb your mind, right? So Guy Montag, his wife, she'll go to sleep with you know what I picture when he mentions it? He calls it a seashell, right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah. Sorry, I thought you were telling them, not me.
It's like a picture as an earbud.
Right, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking of an AirPod. I was like, hey, he also kind of predicted AirPods in a way.
He did, and but in the book he calls it like a tiny seashell, right? That the wife will put in at night, and she goes to sleep just listening to the nonsensical broadcast. So at all times, the wife wants the TVs on and wants something playing in the background, and that's very much where we are in today's world. You know, I know some people don't even like to sit in silence anymore. They need to have a video playing in the background. And I have fallen victim to that as well. And I've been there too, where I'm like, I have something playing on the TV, and then I'm watching a YouTube video on my lap, and I'm like, what am I doing?
Right. Keep that constant need for distraction, because we don't even want to be alone with their own thoughts. And I have a lot of quotes and pages I want to get into. And sorry, did you want to say something before I get into it first?
No, go right ahead.
Because I had mentioned this to Danny in one of our previous videos, that I feel like people don't ask questions anymore. Like, I'm a pretty quiet person. I'm not super talkative, but I do feel like the conversations I've been having, the few conversations I've been having lately, it's like me interviewing someone, like I feel like the character Clarice, who's kind of the person who brings Guy out of his trance. But that's another thing we spoke about in other videos too, of like society being under a trance, and I feel like that also goes into everything we just spoke about. Vecna, Gladys, putting specifically more so children, but now even adults, into like this trance state, and like having someone to bring them out of that.
And just to real quick, just to correlate, you know, Clarice, from what we can understand, is like a younger girl.
Yeah, she's 17, 16, 17.
Who's a guy's neighbor, and she, you know, she really has, she has that innocence, and that she still maintains that zest for life and that interest and that curiosity, and that's what sparks, you know, I think Guy started, you know, having his own discernment, which is the word we're using today, started having his own discernment about what's really happening in society and what his real purpose is. And I think Clarice really ignited that spark to continue to question what's going on around him.
She ignited that flame, if you will. She lit the match. Anyway, I want to read this part, okay? This is page 28, if you want to look with me. You don't have to.
Yes, if you have the book, turn to page 28.
If you go into the middle of the page, she says to him, "People don't talk about anything." And he says, "Oh, they must." She says, "No, not anything. They name a lot of cars or clothes or swimming pools mostly and say, how swell, but they all say the same thing and nobody says anything different from anyone else. And most of the time in the caves, they have the joke boxes and the same jokes most of the time, or the musical wall lit and all the colored patterns running up and down, but it's only color and all abstract. And at the museums, have you ever been? All abstract. That's all there is now. My uncle says it was different once, a long time back, sometimes pictures said things or even showed people." And that's kind of what we're talking about today too, where like art is supposed to have, there should be discourse around art and media, and there should be messages in it. And I feel like this sums it up perfectly. Again, like what I'm saying is like no one's talking about anything anymore. Like no one has anything to say. Everyone just, I really am someone who doesn't like small talk. And I've noticed like people will just come up to you and say a statement. I don't know, do you notice this? Like people will just come up and be like, "Oh, I'm tired. I'm cold. It's raining." Like there's no conversation to be had. And that's why, again, I feel like I'm interviewing people and I'm the one asking all these questions of like trying to have some kind of conversation spark. And it goes into the scene you were mentioning, when the women come over. It kind of foreshadows that scene where she's like, everyone just says how swell, and they have the women have the small conversation with one another, and they don't really say much, and then they just put the TV on.
Right. And that's something we also wanted to mention. So Guy and his wife's name is Millie. You know what I liked about the book is that they drew you into the world quite quickly. It wasn't this long, drawn out explanation. You were just plopped right into Guy's world and his life. And we get the first scene of him coming home after his shift, and his wife is unresponsive in her bed. And then we learn that she had taken all these pill bottles. And, this is definitely going to be, trigger warnings for sure. So the wife is unresponsive, and he has to call the medical team, and they come in and they revive her, right? So it seems like there's a pattern in Guy and Millie's life where she ends up repeating that behavior. So you start to question, okay, well, why is the wife self-medicating to the point where she, basically no longer wants to exist, right? So even as much as she's complicit, there's something within her that's unhappy, right? So as much as she's taught by authority to, have fun, watch TV, don't think too much, there's something within her that is falling. There's something within her that, keeps pulling her to this behavior of numbing herself and potentially even, taking her own life, it seems. And, they mentioned this briefly in another part where they talk about other people in society who end up taking their life. And I think it's just a glimpse into this world where, you know, people are being told to conform and being told how to live, and they're not striving for anything more than what they're being told, right? And they're not consuming anything more than what's given to them. So there's some sort of bleakness and some sort of unhappiness within a lot of people, regardless if they agree with the authority and regardless if they agree with the rules. So Millie, Guy's wife, is very much a rule follower, and she, you know, she thinks it's heinous to go against what the authorities and what the firemen are telling them, right? They're telling them, you know, books are horrendous, and they're telling them that, you know, it's an abomination to pick up a book and to read these words and to consume these stories. So she very much does believe that as well, but yet we see there's something within her that is fighting against it, whether she realizes it or not. What do you think?
No, I agree with that. Like, something deep in her subconscious is coming out, and when they do come to revive her, they also somehow like wipe her memory. Either they wipe her memory or she's just pretending she doesn't remember, because the next day Guy tries to talk to her about it and she doesn't remember anything that had happened.
And we also noticed, am I incorrect about this, but they sleep on 2 different beds.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Because I know at one part he said he's on the opposite side of the room, but maybe I'm misreading that.
I kind of just pictured them in a really big bed at 2 opposite ends, but maybe it was 2 beds.
So I feel like that also goes to show you, like, they, you know, they really do want people to be, in a sense, robotic, right? There's no like real deep love, real deep understanding, very surface level, very shallow. But then we have Guy, who is our main protagonist, and he starts to question what he's really doing and what he's really participating in. And like we mentioned, he meets Clarice, his neighbor, who starts, you know, pointing things out about life, you know, starts posing these questions where Guy's just like, yeah, I wonder about that too. And, you know, there's a scene that I love so much where it starts to rain, right? And Clarice, I forget, she's sticking her tongue out, like feeling the rain and letting the rain touch her tongue. And it kind of inspires Guy to do the same, where he has a moment like right before she leaves, goes back into her house, and he's on his way to work, where he kind of stops and he puts his tongue out and lets himself feel and taste the rain.
Right.
And I just love that small intimate piece, because that also, you know, ties into our connection with nature, right? Our connection with the outside world, and having that more like intimate and natural understanding with our surrounding.
Right. And then that's another thing, they want people in their houses. They don't want people outside. They mention it multiple times that it's strange for someone to just be taking a walk, that's not okay to just be walking around. Like, that seems as a weird behavior. Like, that's seen as somebody to take note of, because they're not following the rules. They're not taking the bait. They're not taking the distraction. They're not sitting in their house watching the walls.
Right. And another main message is that they don't want people to have like quiet time and a quiet space. Another message that Clarice points out is that they no longer have porches and no longer have gardens where people sit out and just, you know, enjoy the sun, or just sit out in the day and just take time to like, you know, simmer in your thoughts, right? They don't really want people thinking they don't want people thinking, and they don't want people asking questions. And the best way to maintain power and control is to keep your society dumb and to keep them complicit.
Exactly. And another main thing that's happening throughout the whole book is war. They don't really go into any specifics. They're just like, war is happening. And it's constantly happening. It's happening almost every day. And it's like not any different from today. War is still going on in many countries, and it's still happening. And the thing is like, in this world, no one can fight up against it. No one's speaking out against it. No one's really even caring, because again, they're just in their house. No one's talking to one another about anything. They're just watching nonsense, and the government's allowed to just continue to do whatever they want to do, which again is still happening in today's society. But that's why we again want to encourage people to read and use critical thinking, and to keep questioning, like always question everything. But you mentioned, I want to go back to something really quickly though. Like, you had mentioned how we're just kind of immersed in the world, and I agree too. There's not like many explanations given, as I just mentioned. It's just like, okay, war is happening, and we're like, okay, I understand what war is, right? This is what I need people to use in like, this is again where I bring it back to like things like Stranger Things, where it's like, yeah, some stuff is critical analysis, and then some stuff is you need to use your brain and think, because when you're watching a movie, right, people will watch a movie and be like, well, that's not realistic. It's like, no, because it's a movie. Or they'll be like, well, I don't understand, right? Like, I think people put like too much, I don't know, too much of reality, not too much of reality, but like, I don't know how to explain it, where like they need they need their hand held through every part of it, and they need everything explained to them and laid out to them and painted to them. And it's like, all right, some stuff.
That's when we have to go back to what we're taught in elementary, where we're using context clues to shape that world that that the writer or the director is creating.
Right, and that's why, again, it also is important for the writer to know what the story is, because then we have clues to follow. And it's like, if you follow the clues and you get a dead end, then it was like, what the hell? Then that's where the criticism will come into play. But like, if you're just lost throughout all of it, then what can we do? And again, where it comes into like, well, now I'm just looking at my screen and I don't know what's going on. I'm looking at I'm scrolling on my phone and I don't know what's going on in the show.
Is there something else you wanted to point out before I wanted to explain, the next steps that Guy goes into, where he starts. Well, I know one thing you did want to talk about was the family.
Yeah. Okay, yes. One more thing I wanted to say about this world. They go into their living room, the parlor, and they refer to the people on the screen as their family. And I think, again, that ties into another topic of today, of the parasocial relationships that we develop. And that's exactly, and again, another thing predicted today, where we have that emotional attachment to TV shows and characters, and we feel like they are our friends or our family, or we know them. And that is where it starts to become dangerous, because it's like that's where, again, we need to have real community and real family. I think it's great that people are able to put something out there that you relate to, of course, but then it's like, you don't actually know those people. Those people are not going to come and save you when shit's going down. Like,
and we can see through Millie that she has more of an attachment and more care and love for the quote unquote family in the TV screen than her own husband, where she values her shows a lot more than she values her husband. There's even a scene where Guy is feeling sick and he's laying in bed, and she has the TVs blaring throughout the day, and that's something they encourage everyone to do, is just have your screens on and have it really loud throughout the whole day. And he's telling her to go, he asks her to go, if she can go and turn down the family in the parlor, and she goes out and pretends to do it, and Guy realizes that she's just pretending to turn the TV down.
Right. And she's also annoyed that he's sick and is like, go to work, get out of here. And like, that's the sad thing too, where like some people, that's kind of their reality, where they are in a house, especially again, bringing it back to children, where they're in an environment and they don't even like the people they're living with, and they're running to find something else to hold on to and some other kind of distraction and a new kind of family. And I understand that, and I've done that with shows and things before, as we mentioned. Like, me and Danny can have that emotional attachment to things. And I will scroll through comments sometimes on YouTube, and there will be people who will really be like, you guys, like, really feel like the people on the screen are their family or their savior or something of that extent.
So we're following Guy, and we're following him to work and his day to day, and he, for a good portion of his life, has been taught that books are bad, and he has to go to houses where, the fire department ends up getting an alarm for anybody who's suspected of owning books, and then they're sent out and they have to go burn the books and burn. It's ironic because they say that the houses are fireproof.
Yeah.
So they end up burning the books and everything else within the house, but the whole structure is still intact. And they have this one call where this woman is suspected of owning books. They get to her house and they find all the books. They start, throwing them all in the center so they can start the burn. And they're trying to get the woman out of the house as the fire begins, and she refuses to go. And Guy is doing his best to get the woman out of the house with him, but she refuses. She has her own power move where she has a match in her hand, and she ends up burning along with her books and really making a statement that she's standing for the importance of books and the importance of knowledge, and she is showcasing how much she's willing to ultimately go down with the ship.
Right. She's like, literally, this is the hill I'm going to die on. And we even see that in activism till this day. There have been people who have lit themselves on fire as a form of activism. So again, like, so much parallel to today's world and society. And even how we mentioned before, like how Millie had something in her subconscious, there's also still something in Guy's subconscious, because so in that scene that you're talking about, he takes a book home with him, but we later learn that he has kind of been doing that for a while now.
Yes, so something within him for the last few years has pulled him towards wanting to take these books for himself, because especially in this moment, he's seeing this woman she's willing to die for these books, and he starts questioning, they must be of significance for this woman to want to end her life for them. And there's something within him that starts to question the purpose of burning these books, and really question why they've been outlawed, and question his purpose and why he's a fireman. And something, like you said, subconsciously within him, he even says like his hand grabbed the book and it wasn't really him or his thought, right? So he's trying to also dissociate from that gravitation towards those books and towards that knowledge, because he knows that it's he's been taught for so long and brainwashed that that's supposed to be bad. So he's questioning himself, like, why is he starting to rebel?
Right. And there's a few more things scenes I put notes on. And so Guy remembers a man that he met in a park a few years ago, and his name is Faber. Are we ready to move to that next part?
Yeah, what page are we on?
Okay, so I want to turn to page 78.
Okay.
So he reconnects with this older gentleman, Faber, who is, what would you say, like part of the rebellion, right? Part of the resistance.
So Faber was, I'm pretty sure, previously a professor. So a lot of people who were in these professions can no longer work, so they can't teach anymore.
And that's, again, another important topic of teachers in society, how important their role is. And they even mention at some point, too, how, like, even actors are no longer out there because they're not able to perform plays like Shakespeare and all of these works of art that they want to bring to life. Because, again, so much of it goes hand in hand. So much of the movies and TV shows we see started out on a page being written down, and it all comes back to writing as well, which is Danny and I love to write, and like it comes back to writing and storytelling and maintaining life and history. And so I wanted to read this part because I think it's really prevalent to everything that's happening in the world. So if you go down 6 lines, he says, Mr. Montag, you are looking at a coward. I saw the way things were going a long time back. I said nothing. I'm one of the innocents who could have spoken up and out when no one would listen to the guilty. But I did not speak, and thus became guilty myself. And when finally they set the structure to burn the books using the firemen, I grunted a few times and subsided, for there were no other grunting or yelling with me. By then, now it's too late. So, again, like that's him saying, I could have spoken up years ago when this first started, but I didn't. And I feel like that's just the message of today, too. Like, we need to start speaking up for injustice and stopping things before we get to this fucking dystopian world. And like I sometimes already feel like we're in a dystopian world.
I did think about this part as well, because he felt like because he felt like, oh, it's just me standing here and nobody else is speaking out with me, then I should just conform and put my head down and stay silent. And I think you mentioned this too. What was the phrase you used the other day? It was like we're witnessing.
Oh, so I wanted to talk about this also. Like we're witnessing the bystander effect in real time. And the bystander effect is basically everyone standing around waiting for someone else to happen. There's a story that this kind of sparked from. I'll try to link an article down below, but there's a main story that phrasing came from, of a woman being beaten out in the street, and all of her neighbors heard her. This is a true story. All of her neighbors heard her screaming, and this went on for like an hour. And then by the time the police arrived, she had passed away. And they were like, they went to interview neighbors, and they're like, well, why didn't you call the police? And every single person was like, I thought someone else would do it. And like her life could have been saved if someone had picked up the phone sooner. But everyone was just waiting for someone else to do it. And that's what we're watching happen time and time again. History keeps going. We keep waiting for other people to do something about it.
Right, and I also feel like that goes hand in hand with like general strikes, right? It's like so many people want to say, oh, we all need to strike, and we all need to what's the word I'm looking for? We all need to abstain from doing this and buying that, and just but the thing is, everyone's like, oh, okay, let's do it, but they're like, oh, I don't know if my neighbor is going to do it, and then I'm here doing it by myself, and now I got fired from work, and now I'm behind on bills, and now, so they're like, oh, my whole life will crumble, but we were supposed to be in this together for us to make a difference and have an impact. So that's why so many people are stunted by fear, because they're not sure if there's actually going to be a class action, a community action. And it seems like Faber felt the same way in this moment, where he did feel so strong. He felt so strongly against this movement, but he noticed nobody around him was joining him in the outrage, so he ended up succumbing to to the rules and regulation. He ended up conforming. Which is why later we see when Guy finally, we're going to talk more about that, when Guy makes his moves and starts really putting into action his rebellion, this kind of sparks something within Faber that he's been waiting for all these years.
Right. And I imagine there are a lot of the older generation out there who eventually did sadly give up, or some of them are still fighting, and they want to see that be reignited in the younger generations. And there's so much happening in the world, and if you look back at history, it's like, thank God there were people that spoke up. Thank God there are people who spoke up during the Holocaust, during slavery, for women, for gay rights, so many things that were like, somebody needs to do something, and we can't all just stand around and wait for other people to do it. Like, then nothing will ever get done. And then also going into like here, like all these like small acts kind of domino effect into one another as well. So it's like we can't just like, no, there's no waiting around, because while you're sitting there waiting around, the evil is acting and they're doing what they're gonna do.
I agree. And I also wanted to point out a part on page 83, because, we're relating this back to where we are as a society. And one of the main reasons we started our book club is because of the lack of reading. And we noticed that they do want us to be dumber. They do want us to brain rot. They do want us to just sit in front of a screen and doom scroll. So it was important for Mel and I to start reading again and to start this book club. And a lot of the books we have on our list are actually banned books. So we thought it was fitting to start the book club with Fahrenheit 451 because of its main message. So when you go on page 83, Faber is talking to Guy, and he's talking about when this all started, about outlawing books. So he says, the whole culture shot through. The skeleton needs melting and reshaping. Good God, it isn't as simple as just picking up a book you laid down half a century ago. Remember, the firemen are rarely necessary. The public itself stopped reading of its own accord. You firemen provide a circus now, and then at which buildings are set off and crowds gather for the pretty blaze. But it's a small sideshow indeed, and hardly necessary to keep things in line. So few want to rebel anymore. And out of those few, most, like myself, scare easily. So I wanted to point this section out because he's informing Guy that, society already started putting books down, and it's eerie that this is where we are in our world now. So I felt so emotional because you can see, like Mel said, the domino effect of how just how quickly things are escalating and can escalate with just the lack of education and the lack of knowledge and the lack of passion for reading. A lot of the times, people say history repeats itself, and if we don't have history to look back on and to read on, then how are we going to learn to break these patterns again? Let's look back to these protesters from history and these activists from history and see what their plans were, and see what the stories they were telling, so that we can learn from that and we can implement that into our world now.
Exactly. And to go back to the beginning, to page 32, because this is also, like, again, keeping history alive, and we really need to stick together, because till this day they will try to rewrite history. And just a quick line, a quick part of that, they write in this book that that they try to give somewhat of a history of why they burn books, and they put established in 1790 to burn English influenced books in the colonials. First fireman Benjamin Franklin. Rule 1, answer the alarm quickly. 2, start the fire swiftly. 3, burn everything. 4, report back to the firehouse immediately. 5, stand alert for other alarms. And they're basically trying to make it seem, they're trying to paint this picture to Guy that it's always been this way, that this is what the history really is. And what he's realizing through talking to Clarice, talking to Faber, looking at books, that they've been lying to him. It hasn't always been this way. There's been a time where people enjoyed reading books. And I feel like that's what they try to do to us even till this day, where they're trying to tell us what we're seeing in front of our eyes is not real, and what we're hearing isn't true, and like they're gaslighting us.
Absolutely. So we have Guy who, he's starting to question things. He met with Faber, the professor. He also realized that his new friend, Clarice, something happened to her. He doesn't really know. There's been talks that she got hit by a car and she's no longer alive. So many little things are starting to wake him up. And he wants to take this newfound rebellion and understand it better. So that's why he does find Faber. And, he's still conflicted between the two worlds because he's been brainwashed and he's been told for so long that this is the way it is and this is why and this is what only makes sense. And now things aren't making sense to him. So he's questioning a lot, and he's finding himself doing things that he never thought he would, like stealing books. And ultimately, he starts to open them and read them. And there's one scene where he pulls the book out and he is forcing his wife to read them with her, where you almost think that Millie, she does allow him to consider the books and allows him to explore the books, but then she reverts right back to complicity, and we'll see later on that she betrays her husband. So the brainwashing for Millie is so deep that even if she had the moment to consider exploring the books, she's too far down the rabbit hole to be able to change her mind.
Right. But that's what they rely on. They rely on people being complicit and complacent, and to just be like, well, this is how it is and this is how it's going to be, and I'm not going to make a difference, and I can't change anything, and we just have to follow the rules. It's me or you, and I'm going to throw you under the bus.
Sorry, I'm just looking for a page quickly. Okay, here. So on page 88.
Oh my God, I have that book. Okay, I have that posted also. Okay, go ahead.
On page 88, after Guy meets with Faber gives him a device, again, similar to an AirPod, where he puts it into his ear, and Faber's like, I'm going to stay with you the whole night because Guy is forced to go back to work tonight. And he's nervous because he feels like he'll end up getting brainwashed again by his captain, and he'll just revert back to his old ways, right? So Faber's like, no, I'll be in your ear. Just listen to me. I'll guide you. And there's a part where, Guy's on his way back home before work, and he says to Faber, I'm not thinking, I'm just doing like I'm told, like always. You said get the money and I got it. I didn't really think of it myself. When do I start working things out on my own? And Faber says, you've started already by saying what you just said. You'll have to take me on faith. And then Guy says, I took others on faith. And Faber said, yes, and look where we're headed. You'll have to travel blind for a while. Here's my arm to hold on to. And Guy says, I don't want to change sides and just be told what to do. There's no reason to change if I do that. So he's letting Faber know, I don't want to just go along with what your plan is and what you have to say, because I've been doing that my whole life as a fireman and been following my captain my whole life, where he really wants to think critically for himself and brainstorm himself and come up with his own ideas and understand his own questions and his own concerns. So he has a fear of just possibly being brainwashed by the other side, but Faber encourages him that all this questioning is showing his sign of being wise and being able to think for himself.
Right. And I wanted to talk about that part too, because I feel like, again, a lot of people feel that way even today, where people are like, well, don't protest are pointless, or don't boycott and don't vote, and like constantly telling people how they should show their resistance or their activism. And I think that that's one of the main issues. It's like, why am I going to listen to you? Like, I need to go out and, again, have discernment for myself and have critical thinking and to figure this out for myself. And it's like, let me go and do what I feel is right in that moment, and then decide for myself what's going to make a difference and what's not going to make a difference.
Absolutely. And I also wanted to point out the next scene where Guy is heading home, and he just, he had this whole conversation with Faber, and they're coming up with a slight plan of resistance, right? But Faber's just telling him, go back home, then go to work and like continue as normal, right? But there's this scene where Guy, he gets so enraged because his wife has her friends over, and he realizes the nonsense and the meaningless conversation and the meaningless show on their walls, and he just explodes. There's this moment where he has no rational thinking. He pulls out a book, which alarms all the ladies. It alarms Millie and her friends, and he starts bashing them and calling them out and forces them to listen to a poem, actually.
And you know what's funny? I was thinking about how, like, if you actually really did this today, people would look at you or you're crazy. Could you imagine if your friends were getting together, you're having a party, and you walk in, you shut the music off or you shut the movie off, and you go, let me read you this. Like, the sad thing is that even today, there will be people who will be like, you're ruining the vibes. You're not having fun. Like, there are people out there today who will be like, no, you're taking everything too seriously. And I feel like, I don't know if this is maybe the point you're going to get into, where like, they're like, oh, in the reading and the poems, it just brings sadness and emotions and evokes things, and we just want to have fun. That's all. That's kind of what they're pushing onto society, even though it's not even really fun. It's just, I again relate it to just like brain rot.
There's even a scene where Millie talks about like driving out into the country and driving so fast that she's hitting and killing animals. And like, that's even a form of fun that they're taught. Like, anything to really not use your brain, right? Like, go drive and drive 90 miles an hour and don't really think too much about what you're doing and what your actions are.
Right. And even Clarice mentions that, like, oh, all the kids just want to go to the junkyards and break the cars. And there's literally today, there are rec rooms today where you can go and just break shit. And it's like, and yeah, like, it doesn't seem like there's any, like, there's nothing of substance happening.
Right. So Guy ends up reading this poem, and all of the women they're appalled, right? To the point where even one of them cries. And I think this is up for interpretation, right? Do we think, these are the two questions I pose. Do we think she's crying because the poem affected her and she's feeling emotions she didn't expect to feel? Or is she crying because she's so appalled and because, she's being forced to hear this book and she knows that it's wrong and it's against the law?
I took it as, I think the poem made her feel something. That's how I took it as. What do you think?
I agree.
And just to go back a little bit, a few pages of like before he reads the book, he's like, let's talk. How's your family? How's your husband? Because again, no one's even having those kind of conversations, right? Again, people don't ask questions.
Right, they come over, and as soon as they come in, Millie puts the TV on so that they can watch their show, which is just a bunch of clowns killing animals or something like that.
Right, and one of them has children, and they have a little discussion about whether they should have children or not. And I think it's, again, to go into our overall message, she says, you heave them into the parlor and turn the switch. It's like washing clothes, stuff laundry in and slam the lid. They just as soon kick as kiss me. Thank God I kick back. And oh, also, sorry, before that, I should go back. She's like, I plunk the
What page are we on? Sorry.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'll start over. Let's go to literally the last sentence of page 92.
Okay.
I plunk the children in school 9 days out of 10. I put up with them when they come home 3 days a month. It's not bad at all. You heave them into the parlor and turn the switch. It's like washing clothes, stuff laundry in and slam the lid. So again, in this world, the children get taken at a young age, put into school where we don't even know what they're learning. But she also is just like, and then I just throw them in front of the TV. And we see that today with the iPad kids generation, where it's like, and here's a screen, and that's it.
See, another thing he predicted, it's prevalent more than ever. So many parents just want to plop their child in front of a screen to take away the pressure and the responsibility of having to raise them and interact, because they're like, I think we've mentioned this in one of our other episodes, you know, it's not always the parents who are like, it's not always the bad parents, right? I don't think you're the worst parent if you do end up putting your child in front of a TV or an iPad. I just think that we're all trying to escape, right? I think even the parents are trying to find forms of escapism because, you know, whether it be unhappiness or whether it be that they're overworked or whether it be that they're also trying to disengage from their schedule and their day. So,
right. But it's also like, be conscious of what it is your children are watching and consuming. And then again, once they're out on the internet and they have their own profiles and social media and who they're contacting and who they're talking to, bringing it back to like what we were talking about at the beginning of this video, where there are people out there, there are adults out there who just don't have the best intentions.
Absolutely. And, you know, this ties into our overall message of teaching your children to love reading, right? Because it is so easy to just put on an iPad or put on the TV and throw a movie on and go about your business. But you know, if you instill this behavior of, okay, after dinner, we're going to read this together. You know, so many parents don't want to be involved in what their children are reading or working on. And they do just expect, you know, a nod to the teachers, they do just expect the teachers to be raising their children for a majority of their day. And they feel like that's the teacher's responsibility. They come home and I take care of my responsibility as the parent. And a lot of the times it doesn't go hand in hand with what they're working on in school. And I think, you know, it is on the parents to instill that passion for reading, because so many kids aren't naturally going to gravitate towards reading, unfortunately. They just find it boring now. There's so many ways that they can find that dopamine, right? That what we were saying in one of our other episodes.
Getting the dopamine and the fix from whatever they're scrolling through, and they're having withdrawals throughout the day. And I noticed myself that happening to myself as well. And I know there's going to be parents out there who are offended, and it's like, that's your child. That is your responsibility. So as much as you want to be like, well, you don't have kids, you don't know, it's like, well, I'm a person. I was once a child, so I do know, and people forget that aspect of it. And it's like, you are the sole person that is supposed to be responsible for your child, and you should be making
And be the main role model.
Be the main role model, be involved in your child's life, know what's going on, be there to protect them. And yeah, we have to come together as a community in a sense, but it's like, you don't know who these people are.
Do you remember, I don't know if they still have this in school, but we would have a chart with all of our names on it, and it would be like, you have to read like 25 books in a year or something like that, and then you get a sticker, like you have a star sticker next to your name if you completed the book, and then whoever completed the most books get a prize.
Right, are they not doing that anymore? We have to do book reports constantly too, are book reports not a thing? I don't understand what's happening. What's going on?
And something we also mentioned is that there's, so many people are just we use this in our day for certain books, the Spark Notes, or just going online just to be like, okay, what was the summary of this book? And not really enjoying the path the book takes you. The adventure you're supposed to be immersed into.
And also trying to find what your children are interested in. There's like a moment that always sticks out to me. So Danny and I used to volunteer tutor and help children with their reading. And I remember there was this one kid that I would tutor, and he just hated everything. He didn't want to participate. Everything was just boring, and I don't want to do this, and just low energy. And then if we got to finish our packet of the day, then he would get to go and pick a book that he wanted to read. It was like, we have to finish this packet first, and then you can pick a book you want to read. I remember one day, one day we were reading a book, like he didn't like a lot of the books we were reading, and then one day, one of the books was on insects, and I just saw like, he like perked up his interest, like it was just such a great moment to finally see something click with him, and like him finding something that ignites interest in him. And then we actually were able to finish our lesson that day, that he went to go and pick a book, and he picked another book that had to do with insects, and like finding that thing that made him be like, yeah, okay, I do want to read. That's cool. Like, that's awesome. Like him learning about the different bugs, like that was interesting to him. And I think that that's important too, of like finding what like ignites that spark into someone. Like that was just, I don't know, that memory just like will always like stick with me.
And just to tie it back to the book, the rebels who are still reading and finding ways to retain the stories, they recognize the importance of carrying this for the future generation. So we see Guy take his rebellion and act upon it, and we have this pivotal moment where he's back at work, and he's having this debate with his captain, right? It seems like his captain is trying to bait him, right? Because the captain already had an inkling that Guy potentially has stole a book, and we see the captain utilizing actually a lot of quotes, because the captain admits that, I guess before this movement, right, before these outlaws, he read a lot as well, but to the point now where he's utilizing those quotes against education, right? He's utilizing these books as a way to prove that they are harmful, and they don't make you a better person. And I found it so interesting that he remembered a lot of literature.
Right. I really liked that part though. Like I thought that was very, I liked it because I feel like that's also kind of like representative of maybe even like a politician, where it's like they're going to use all these words and it's going to make it seem like they're a smart individual. But that's what you see here, where he's remembering all these quotes, and he's using them, like you said, against him. He's weaponizing the books against him to be like, yeah, listen to this, but it's wrong. You know what I'm saying? And like, I really enjoyed that part. It was interesting. It was like, okay, yeah, it's just because again, there could be, just because someone does read or does have this knowledge, it doesn't necessarily mean that they are intelligent or that they are on the right side of history.
To me, it almost seemed like at one point he did enjoy books, and I just think he got so consumed and so deep into the anti-education and anti-knowledge and anti-book ideology that even if there's a part of him that did enjoy the books and does agree with these quotes, he refuses to go against his beliefs. What do you think?
Right. I can see that. Like, he's so, like, again, like, he's also brainwashed to the point where he's like, well, what we got to do, this is what we need to do now, so this is what the reality of our life is.
And it's also like he's on such a high of the power he possesses, that even if he did agree with the other side and agreed with the rebellion, he would never give up that power.
Right. I feel like he didn't take the right messages from what he did learn. So maybe there was a part of him that enjoyed it, but I feel like, I don't know, I felt like he was kind of taunting him in that scene as well.
I agree with that. And trying to bait him to see how much Guy is rebelling, and trying to really test him to see where his loyalties lie, where it builds up to this pivotal moment where they get a call, they get an alarm, and they have to go do a burn at another house, and we all find out along with Guy that they pull up to Guy's house.
Right.
And they force Guy to do the burn. So it looks like his wife, along with her friends, tipped off the firehouse. His wife betrayed him. We see his wife running out of the house with her suitcase, running into her cab, being the sheep we always knew she was.
Right.
And betraying her husband. She didn't agree with her husband's newfound perspective. And Guy's captain forces him to go burn all the books in his house. He said, you made this mess, you have to be the one to clean it up. And unfortunately, Guy succumbs to that pressure, despite Faber trying to convince him to flee. He knew he wouldn't be able to, because there's also this other element of like this robotic hound, which we didn't really mention, but it does play a significant part of the book, because this is also part of the dystopian world where we talk about AI and we talk about robots that are now on the rise as well, where they have this robotic hound that has some sort of medication, right? It has a needle attached to it.
Right. And I was like, does it kill you, or does it just, like, that's the thing. I feel like
Paralyze you, right?
they arrest people and sometimes they kill them. I don't know how they determine.
So this hound is so powerful. It can detect you, it will attack you, it can destroy you, and it can also insert this needle that will paralyze you. So this is important because Guy can't flee, because he knows that there's the hound lurking around. So he does the burn, and there's this moment where the captain is having a standoff with him and lets him know he's going to be under arrest. And do you want to tell them what? I thought this scene was so powerful.
Yeah, you can continue.
Guy still has his uniform and his flamethrower, right? What is it?
Right. Instead of like the hose of water, it's like a hose of fire, essentially, right?
Hose of kerosene, yes. And he has this moment where he utilizes that weapon against the captain. And initially, I envision he's holding it up to his captain, and his captain kind of smirks and is just like, don't even think about it.
Right. Exactly. Because the captain even says to him, like, oh, you're going to hold a gun to me. He's like, all right, you want to say your speech, like, say what you need to say, thinking that, like, doesn't think that Guy is actually going to do anything. Like, doesn't actually think he's going to act on this. But he ends up, you know, obviously, we're hoping you've read the book if you're watching, but if not, and I love this scene because he turns to the captain. He says, "We've been burning wrong this whole time," or that's, you know, and I love that part. And then he commits murder, and you know, it's again like a testament to see like how far someone's rebellion is going to take them.
Yes, I wanted to look at that part where he says that line to his captain. He says, "We never burned bright." And that's when he attacks his captain, and his coworkers are still standing there, but he just knocks them out.
Right.
Now he's dealing with all these emotions of what he just did, but we have the hound who can sniff out and is alerted, and he knows that the hound is just around the corner and does ultimately insert the needle into Guy's leg and paralyzes his leg, but Guy ultimately was able to burn the hound, the robotic hound. It sounds wrong if I say burn the dog, but it's a robotic hound, and he does end up burning the robot. And he has this moment where he's on the floor and he knows his leg is paralyzed, but there's all these sirens and he's now a fugitive and he knows that they're coming for him. So he does have to escape, and we're following this chase scene, and he ends up finding some of the books he hid in his backyard on his way to the alleys, right? Because he needs to stay hidden. And what does he do, right? Because he's making his way to Faber's ultimately, but he stops and plants the books he had into the captain's house. So him and Faber had like talked previously.
Was it the captain's house or just another fireman's house?
Was it just another fireman's house?
That's what I had thought.
Here, let me read this part.
What page is this?
123. We're on page 123. So he approaches the house and he says, "Mrs. Black, are you asleep in there?" He thought. "This isn't good, but your husband did it to others and never asked and never wondered and never worried. And now, since you're a fireman's wife, it's your house and your turn. For all the houses your husband burned and the people he hurt without thinking. He hid the books in the kitchen and moved from the house again to the alley and looked back, and the house was still dark and quiet, sleeping." And then I'll turn to 124, where he says, sorry, let me go back. Towards the end of 123, the last line. "Then he stood in the cold night air waiting, and at a distance he heard the fire sirens start up and run, coming to burn Mrs. Black's house, while he was away at work, to make his wife stand shivering in the morning air while the roof let go and dropped in upon the fire." So yeah, I agree with you. I think it was one of his coworkers.
Yeah.
Not the captain's wife. I was wrong about that. But he and Faber had previously discussed this plan to start planting books in the fireman's house. to begin the resistance.
Right.
So we have Guy make his way to Faber's, and he knows that he has to go on the run now and find a way to escape. But him and Faber also had the plan for Faber to go to another town and start reprinting some books so that they can start circulating books again and have copies. And that's something Faber is going to do towards the end of the story, where we just end up following Guy towards the end on this chase scene where he does ultimately get out of town and makes his way down the river. And he is able to find a group of men who were also previous professors, just like Faber.
Right.
And there's this moment where they're all sitting around a fire, right? And I like that moment where he's mentioning that there was this beauty of the fire that he never got to appreciate.
Right. I like that part too. He said he didn't know that fire could bring comfort.
And they all revealed that, there's this moment where they all reveal that they have all these stories hidden within them, saved in their memory. And there's this revelation that they can take these stories with them and in the future rewrite them or write down as much as they remember so that they can revive reading, right? Revive these stories. And ultimately we do see, how Mel mentioned that there's war going on and it's finally been declared, right? I guess an attack, right? Finally been declared.
Well, it's weird. I feel like throughout the story, war is being declared, because even in the scene where the wives are talking, she's like, it's going to be a quick war because her husband's a soldier. She's like, oh, quick war, 48 hours. They say it's going to be quick. It's going to be a quick war. So it seems like war is constantly happening. They're like, oh, war is declared again. And they're like, oh, and the war ended. Oh, and the war was declared again. And that's kind of what I took from the book. Like, it's constantly happening throughout their life.
I mean, they ultimately end up destroying his city.
Right.
And him and the group of men are watching the city disintegrate. And Guy just has so many emotions and so many thoughts running through him. And he even has this moment where he wasn't sure if he would feel sad if his wife Mildred died. But I do like that as like the city is basically, disintegrating and tumbling down, he does call out for her. And there is this last bit of sadness and emotional attachment he had to his wife and to the life he once had.
Right, and then he also has the moment of realization for seeing it happen in front of him, because again, they keep them inside for so much of it, where it's like he starts to wonder how often that's actually happening and how many other cities have fallen and how many other people have been taken, because they never really ever processed that information. And now he's like out really seeing it. And I feel like, again, another parallel to today's world where bombs are being dropped and war is happening and people are being killed, and we're so far removed from it that I don't know where I'm going with that. But again, we're just so far removed from it.
And that we're being taught to be removed from it. They're like, oh yeah, just, scroll on your TikTok or just put that show on. And don't really worry your little head off about what we're doing over here.
Right, continue on as if everything's normal. And that's kind of the notion I got from this book. And like, we see that in dystopian movies all the time, or like movies where it's like, and just be robotic and everything's fine and hello, how are you? And just keep acting like everything's normal. And to kind of bring that into like today's world, just recently the Golden Globes happened, and I want you guys to go and watch interviews with Mark Ruffalo, because every time he gets stopped, he says, they ask him how he's doing, and he goes, terrible, I'm doing terrible. And talks about all the atrocities that are happening in the world. And then it's just like, I think we need to normalize that, being like, actually, you know what, everything's not okay. And I think sometimes people take that as like fear mongering or paranoia or negativity, and like, well, I need to protect my peace. And it's like, no, you need to wake up to the reality of the world. And that's kind of what we see in this, throughout this book, where Mildred's just like, no, I need to protect she's trying to protect her peace, in a sense of being like, I need to just watch my shows, and I need to put my seashell in my ear, and I need to pretend like everything's fine, even though she's tried to, take her life, and her husband is now going through this like rebellion and madness, and she's, goes against him and still follows through with everyday life. And we're seeing that happen in real time.
I agree, and just to point out what you said about the Golden Globes, it's also right, that dystopian and that dichotomy of like, oh, look at this lavish event with all these beautiful celebrities and high valued people of the world, and they're all dressed up and they're all pretty, and then you have this one, not just one, but we're specifically pointing out Mark Ruffalo, who's like, well, I'm going to make it a point to remind you all what is actually happening. And yeah, sure, we can all get together and we are part of the elite, but I'm still going to call out a lot of the problems that we can't shy away from and we can't ignore.
Exactly. And that's the thing, is you're looked at as radical and you're looked at as crazy. And that's how all of these people who are rebelling because they want to read and they want to retain knowledge are looked at in this society. And that's one of the main reasons we wanted to read this book, because again, it's so relevant to everything that's happening today.
And one more thing I do want to point out before we wrap up. We have our protagonist guy, Montag, who is part of this authoritarianism, right? And part of this evil force who's arresting, kidnapping, and potentially killing people, right? And he still decides to make his own choice to go against that. And despite all that brainwashing, and despite all that evil he's been taught, there was still something within him that knew that that wasn't moral, that that wasn't the right thing he should be doing. It was still something inside of him that reminded him what's good of this world and how he could be part of that goodness. And I just think that is a message to certain groups we're witnessing today, that you can be that rebel, and you can wake up and maybe at night you have these thoughts of, what am I really doing? And look how much I'm hurting people, and how that makes you feel. And if it doesn't make you feel good, how you can wake up tomorrow and change your mind and actually do something for the better, and do something to make a statement, to show just how much you care about other people.
Yeah. It's never too late to change, and like to be the change that you want to see, and to speak up and speak out. And how I mentioned earlier, like, we shouldn't be shaming people for their form of activism. And now more than ever, we need to come together with each other. And like, there's already so much that's dividing us. It's like, no, we need to fight the machine. We need to fight the man. We need to come together and be one strong unit, because there's more of us than there are of them.
Absolutely. I really do hope anyone watching that hasn't read this book yet, please consider picking it up and reading it. It was great. I'm so happy we started with this one. I can't wait for us to continue our book club. We are doing a book a month, so Our next episode, we will be revealing what our next book is. So again, find ways you can get the book, the library, thrift stores, local bookstores.
Yeah, I'm so happy we started this. This is our small act of rebellion. And of course, there's more that we want to do and say, and hopefully, you know, be that spark to other people to use their discernment, use their critical thinking, speak up, speak out, fight back. Knowledge is power.
To care more, care about each other, care about the future that we're building for the youth, what we want them to grow up into, and how we can make it better for them.
And I want to go off of that really quickly before we end it, of like, there's a lot of people out there who are like, well, I don't want to have kids and I don't like kids, and that's well and fine. You're allowed to live your life the way you want to live your life, but people are still reproducing and children still exist, and we still need to help them and save them. And even long after we perish, the world will still be turning and revolving. And I think it's just very important that we constantly try to make it better and leave some kind of impact and change on the world.
Well said.
Thank you. Vote for me in 2038.
Thank you all so much for watching. We can't wait to see you in our next episode.
Bye.